Today we're going to take a question from one of my Let's Parent on Purpose listeners who emailed in, struggling with behavior and consequences for one of their young children. What they're doing is not working. They're exasperated and looking for help. So I'm calling up my friend Bradley McCallister, who is a licensed Christian counselor, also the foster and adoptive parent of 4 special needs children, along with his wife Brittany. He shares some really helpful strategies for my listener as well as all of us. You're going to want to listen to this, whether you have a bunch of little kids in your house or especially elementary age children. This will be so helpful for you today. Hey, I'm Jay Holland, and this is Let's Parent on Purpose. This is a podcast designed to help you thrive and not just survive your parenting years. Each week, I'll bring you an insight or an interview that will help encourage and equip you in your marriage, your parenting, or your personal walk with Jesus. If you like what you're hearing, you can subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends. And if you want some help in your family, I've created a fun family conversations ebook that I would love to give to you. You can get that simply by texting the word THINGS, THINGS, to 66866. That's THINGS to 66866. For those of you that subscribe to my Things for Thursday email, a couple of weeks ago, I asked you for topics that you would like covered that you're struggling with, and I got a number of great ones. I want to cover one of those today because I think it's a topic that all of us struggle with at one point or another, some more than others. And thankfully, as I shared in my last podcast episode, because of my Patreon supporters, I have just recently upgraded the purchase of materials to help with the program. So I've got this awesome new Rode Podcaster recording equipment that actually allows me to call up somebody through my phone on Bluetooth and get in an expert. So I'm going to call my friend Bradley McCallister. He was on a couple episodes a couple of years ago that were fantastic. Bradley is a Christian. He and his wife both have their masters in Christian counseling. They hung up their counseling service professional role because they have adopted multiple special needs kids and get plenty of counseling at home. So let's call up Bradley right now. I'm going to share the question with you, but this is one about consequences not working and what to do, especially when you have little kids or multiple kids and you in delayed consequences aren't having an issue. So let's call Bradley.
Hello?
Bradley.
Hey there.
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. So I called you a couple minutes ago to ask if we could do this, and you said yes, but you wanted to move to your truck to get some air conditioning. Are you successfully relocated?
I am.
All right, good. Bradley, I just a real quick update for those who maybe got to hear you a couple of years ago. You were on a couple of podcasts we have that I'll link in the show notes about matching behavior and consequences, and how and one of those was how consequences don't have to be right away. Now we're going to actually I'm hitting you again because I have a behavior consequence question from a parent. But real quick, how have you been? What's been going on in your life? Anything eventful in the last couple of years?
Yeah, anything not eventful is a better question. So last summer, about a year ago, we became officially licensed foster parents, planning to take one child that we knew was like a particular challenge. About a month before he came, we got called about taking a sibling set of 3 for just a couple weeks, and they are still with us. So it's been definitely an eventful year with all of that going on.
Yeah, so I think around the time of our first podcast, you and your wife, Brittany, who both of you were in your 20s, were adopting, I think it was a 15 or 16-year-old young man from Ethiopia.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's what most young married 20s do. And since then, you're not what?
I said, yeah, why not start with a teenager?
Sure. Yeah, you get to skip all those toddler years.
Yeah.
And now you guys have added 3, you have currently there's 4 in your home. Is that right? So,
yeah. Well, now we have 4 total.
Okay.
At present.
All right.
Yep.
Well, you've got everything under control enough to answer this question, or at least help us talk through this question. So, do you mind if I read? This is an email. I'm going to withhold the name just in case it's a mom. That's going to become obvious, but in case the mom would like to remain anonymous. But I thought it was a great question. It says, "Hi, Jay. I'm a stay-at-home mom of 3 girls, ages 3.5, 1.5, and 6 weeks. My 3-year-old is high energy and just the coolest person, but she's 3, and so she and I get into conflicts a lot. I'm struggling just to get her to obey, especially when I'm nursing or otherwise engaged. I usually just provide a consequence later, a little earlier bedtime or some time out, but it doesn't seem to fix the problem. If she has a bad attitude or doesn't obey when I tell her to come and sit in time out, now she's disobeyed me multiple times. I don't want to keep heaping punishments on top of her original consequence, but I don't know how to deal with the attitude and the continual disobedience. My parents disciplined using lots of spanks when we didn't obey, and that made it easy. Come to the bedroom for a spank for telling mom no. You won't? Okay, now you're going to get 3 spanks. That hasn't worked for our family, but I can't figure out a better way. I don't like to spank because it feels like I'm never doing it without anger, so I'm happy to do the hurting in the moment. Hey, you know what? That's a great confession, and I have absolutely felt the same way, and that doesn't feel very Christ-like. So what advice would you have for a young mama of a willful 3-nager?" And Bradley, this is actually good advice for a scenario that happens far more than just when your child is 3 and you're nursing another child. So how can you help us?
Right. So I think parenting more than one child ever is difficult because of just all of the needs that everybody needs at the same time, right? But in this situation, it sounds like we've got a strong-willed, some might even say stubborn, 3-year-old, and it sounds like mom's frustrated because she's stuck in this control battle, essentially, with a 3-year-old, which can be crazy-making and very frustrating at times. And also, it sounds like what she's experienced is that consequences are not an effective way to change the behavior, which, again, can add to the frustration. And I think it's great that she can admit out of that frustration is what makes her want to spank.
Right.
Because it may not change the behavior, but it makes her feel a little bit better. Just totally understandable. So if the consequences aren't going to change the behavior, I think you have to look at it differently and try to be preemptive and preventing the behavior that you don't want to see. So if you know, you can't do this all the time, but if you know you're going to be in a situation where another child needs your undivided attention, and you have this active child, think, are there activities that you can set her to on her own for, those 10, 15, 20 minutes that can kind of keep her occupied so that you can do what you need to do, and you're not going to be fussing at her the whole time and frustrated and that kind of thing. A lot of times to prove that you're the one in control, you can share that control. So if you can give the 3-year-old in this situation 2 or 3 choices maybe of an activity, you're giving her voice in it. She's decided how she wants to spend her time within the parameters you set up. And hopefully that can help, free you up to provide the care you need to provide to another child.
I think that's phenomenal advice. And I was thinking as you were talking, it's not just a parent situation where you've got to deal with another child, but hey, so many of us have our work lives disrupted as we're going through the coronavirus stuff. So sometimes you're trying to work from home, or sometimes you just need to pay attention for a little bit of time. And additionally, with giving them activities, I know that I do this and it's not a good idea. Like, I want to be productive, and so I will also often think of like, okay, what would be the most productive thing that my child can do during that time? And I'll try to get them to do that. Like, I got to do this, you read a book, or I got to do this, you do this chore. And the truth is, like, a child's not terribly interested in reading a book or doing a chore or these things. So they're going to find reasons to be distracted and come back to you during that. So in the giving of a choice to the child, which is a great idea because that does give them some control, offer choices of things that actually would keep them engaged for that time. Things that they don't need you to do, and things that they're already motivated to do.
Right. Yeah, and one thing so we have the kids in our house right now are 5, 6, 7, and 16. And the younger 3 have some developmental delays and things, so they often function, a year or 2 younger than their chronological age. And one thing that's been really helpful with them is we set two jars side by side, and we filled one with pieces of cereal. And we were getting frustrated with constantly calling out behavior that we didn't want to see, and it just felt like it was negative all the time. So what we used this tool to do was to praise them for the behavior we did want to see. And so it got to the point where if they said thank you, if they used good manners, or if they were, did something that was good, they'd be like, do I get a piece of cereal? Like, they got excited about behaving well because we would transfer, 1, 2, 3, whatever pieces of cereal into their jar. And whenever it got filled up to a certain point, we would go to a bouncy house or one of the trampoline parks.
So your cereal had like an immediate reward, and could they eat their cereal, or the cereal was just there to represent, like, once we get past a certain point, we get a reward?
Right. Yeah, the cereal was just a visual kind of reminder, and then they knew that they were working towards something, towards a bigger goal.
Okay. I love the reward idea. We've done it for some of our kids, they get super into it, and for some, depending on where they are developmentally, they don't.
Right.
But it makes me think, if you're training a pet or an animal, you shouldn't wait until they do the wrong behavior and then punish them. You should seek every opportunity. If you're training a dog to sit, or if you're training a dog to roll over, you don't want to spank them or yell at them when they're not sitting or they're not rolling over. You want to praise and reward the behavior that you want to get, and then that dog will start to associate it with, whoa, every time I do this, I get praised, I get rewarded. And so the same thing with our kids. Consequences don't have to be negative. We tend to think of the word discipline, and we tend to think of the word consequence in a negative connotation, but they don't have to be. There should be so many more positive consequences in your child's life than negative ones. And if not, you're both going to be really bitter, and everything's going to be harder. So Bradley, what are some different reward systems that have worked for people? You talked about the jar. What are some others that have worked? Yeah.
So, and again, like you said, none of these are necessarily going to work for everybody. I have sticker charts where it's the same kind of thing, or like check boxes where you can, if you do your chores without me reminding you, you get a sticker. I've had those work great for families, and then I've had kids that just shred them.
Yeah.
So that can be something that's good. Like talking about rewards. So thinking about like special time alone with mommy or daddy to go get ice cream, or like our kids would just love to go for a walk or go on a bike ride together. So, I think that those can be some good rewards that kids can work towards. Usually, so Karen Purvis, she has a book called The Connected Child. She would say that if you reinforce the behavior within 3 seconds, the child will learn. So that's where something visual that's quick and easy to show the child what you just did was good can be really helpful and really, really effective. So, whether
say that again, Bradley. If you reinforce the behavior within 3 seconds, the child will learn. Yeah. Is that what you? Okay. And for how old of a child are you talking about with that?
I think like about age 3 to 4 and up.
Okay.
Whenever a child's old enough to kind of start understanding like consequences and is able to kind of receive pleasure from pleasing their parents. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I think around that point, if you can reinforce the behavior quickly, then the child is more likely to learn and to retain that lesson. So that's where, like, even if it doesn't have to be cereal or food, it could be pennies. You know, you move change from one jar to another, or beans. You know, something that can kind of show that progress. I think. I'm not sure if I'm giving you something new here, just repeating the same thing. But yeah, I think like that's the general idea of what can be effective and helpful.
Yeah, and as far as rewards go, you have a couple of different options. There are reward charts out there that like actually show the pictures of the behaviors that you want. So that's one option. And that's especially good if you're trying to focus on a very particular, like let's say that your child is generally good, but they're really struggling with these 2 or 3 things. That can be a good way of like, you know, there's a pictorial reminder and then there's a positive consequence when you do those things. And then others could just be, you know, like you said, if it's a more general reward chart or like a reward jar, that gives you the opportunity to reward as much as you want for whatever behavior that you have in there. And I'll tell you, this is one, especially if you have multiple children who are older and not like old, like teenagers or something, but multiple young children. There's even more than like getting punished for something. There are many children who will be inspired, like competitively inspired because they see their sibling getting rewarded. Yeah. And so they'll also try to mimic that behavior because there's nothing worse than watching somebody else get something that you want.
Right. Yeah, we actually, you could say maybe it backfired a little bit, but one child, if they weren't the first one to say thank you or at dinner time or, you know, whatever, they would get upset because they're not the ones that got that piece of cereal or whatever. Yeah. Even though we'd still give them a piece for saying thank you. One other thing that I think is important as far as the positive versus negative reinforcement of things for different personality types in kids. We have another child that is a little bit more emotionally fragile, I would say, than stubborn. And so she really aims to please. And so if she doesn't, she can be very easily kind of crushed. And so if you find yourself where you're constantly saying no, or like constantly frustrated and expressing that frustration to the child, it can really sow these seeds of I'm not good enough or I'm just a bad kid and that kind of thing. And so even if you've had a rough day like that, at the end of the day at bedtime, coming back and just reinforcing and telling the child, you're such a good child. I love you so much. You're good. You're valuable, not because of how you behave or whatever, but just because you're you. You know, I think building up a kid's self-esteem is another important way to kind of preemptively deal with negative behaviors.
Yeah. And I also think, excuse me, that also as a mom and dad, even when your children are young, learning to apologize when you've blown your behavior really helps. Absolutely. Really helps mimic to them that you apologize not because you're the kid and somebody else in power is making you apologize, but because it's the right thing to do. So you kind of mimic that heroes, that people that you admire will apologize for their mistakes. They'll try to make things right. And you know, it's really bad if the only sorries happening in your home are from child to other child or child to parent, you're really missing out on teaching them that, you know, your whole life you have to be humble. Your whole life you have to make course corrections. And the other benefit of apologizing is then like when they get frustrated about something and, you know, I'm always doing wrong or you're always mad at me, you can go back and remind them, no, like, remember when I had to apologize to you for this because I lost my temper or, you know, I just wasn't paying attention or, you know, those give you opportunities as well. For long-term training in your child by the behaviors that you have. Right, exactly.
Yeah, I came across the idea that more is caught than taught.
Yeah,
a couple weeks ago, and that's you know, really kind of hit me hard whenever I think about how do my kids typically see me. Am I tired and stressed and short with them? You know, too often.
Right.
So.
Yeah, very good stuff. Bradley, I think that we've given some good meat for this sweet mom to get to try some different avenues on here. So I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. And hey, you have a business, by the way. This is just a free plug for you. I said before I called you, I shared with parents that you've hung up your professional counseling I don't know if license, but definitely like your practice of professional counseling, because you get to do it so much in your own house now. So what do you do to pay the bills, Bradley?
We build custom furniture. We build some really, really nice tables, countertops, and some custom cabinets, and we're able to ship them all over the country. So the business is called Redirected Wood Company. And we have a website. It's redirectedwoodco.com. And we're also on Facebook and Instagram with a lot of our work displayed there.
Yeah, and his stuff is art. It's useful art, but it is gorgeous. So not only so Bradley and Brittany, they started this really to begin the support of adopting a special needs child from Africa. But additionally, I pulled him out of the workshop to answer this question. So if you are interested in some beautiful custom made furniture, either for yourself or gifts for somebody else, check out Redirected Wood. Is it redirectedwood.co? Redirectedwoodco.com. Okay, redirectedwoodco.com. We'll put up links in the show notes for you to find that. And especially follow them on Instagram or Facebook, and you'll just see the beautiful stuff that they do. So, Bradley, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and I'm going to let you get out of your truck now.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Thanks.
All right, bye-bye. All right, so you can see why I love Bradley so much. You know what makes me really proud is that Bradley at one time was just this little pipsqueak of a middle schooler in my youth group in West Virginia, and now he is a godly man, a very wise man. He was actually adopted as a child himself, and so just so proud of Bradley and Brittany. I hope that this has been encouraging for you, and whether you are nursing a child right now or whether your kids are a little bit older, this stuff works. It absolutely works. We've done it before, and any one particular behavioral method doesn't necessarily work with every child. And that's something to remember. If like you are so rigidly stuck to one way of training and disciplining your children, and it's not working, and you just keep bearing down more and more and more on it, everybody's going to be frustrated in your home. So be flexible. Notice the differences in behavior. Notice the differences in personality. Some of them, a gentle coax can get it, and some of them you got to be a lot more firm. And just realize that it's going to change over and over again. And just because you have kids doesn't make you a parenting expert. And just because you get a PhD in parenting also doesn't make you a parenting expert. We're all in process, because every day we've never been here before. We might have been close, but we've never been exactly here. So keep at it. You'll get better and better, and keep coming back to this podcast, because we're going to just continue to encourage you and equip you into building a thriving family. Hey friend, thank you so much for listening today. I pray it's been an encouragement to you, as you are an encouragement to me by coming back week after week. If this was a help to you, don't forget to share it specifically with somebody that you know would also be blessed by today's topic. If you want to be a supporter of Let's Parent on Purpose, you can do that by joining our Patreon community or giving a one-time gift to help get this podcast out to as many people as possible. You can do that by going to letsparentonpurpose.com and then clicking the support or give button in the top right-hand corner. Don't forget to get your Fun Family Conversations ebook as well, and subscribe, share it with people, and all of those other things that people who love podcasts do. This is Jay Holland, thanking you again for joining me, reminding you that parenting is a marathon and not a sprint. We'll talk to you soon.